All right, it is the B Block Podcast, and I am your host, Brandon Scott. I appreciate you for joining me, however it is that you found the podcast, whether that be on YouTube, whether that be on the audio-only platforms. I appreciate it. Another thing that I appreciate is the opportunity and honor to be friends and colleagues with one Kim Davis. That means that I have access to Kim Davis. I can just call up, text Kim Davis and say, the esteemed Kim Davis, and say, hey, would you just pop on the podcast? And we got a relationship or such. Well, you'll just say, yeah, just let me know when you need me to be there. And so, look, we got a lot to talk about, Kim. It's been an incredible Texan season. The Rockets look like they've got something brewing. So I'm really excited to have you, Kim. First of all, thank you for being here. And how is everything?
Everything's good. And, I'm always excited to talk with you in person, anywhere I see you, and definitely to be a part of the B Block podcast. So I'm super grateful for the invitation. And, you're right. You can always call me, buddy. I got you.
Kim Davis of Chalk Talk, and not only Chalk Talk, but tell us about the new television show that you've been doing at CW 39 of the last couple months now.
3 months. You started in September. It's called H-Town Sports Talk, and it comes on Friday nights at 10 o'clock. It's a half-hour show. There'll probably be some plans to expand it in the new year, but I'm on with a guy named Brad Gilmore, and it's kind of sports talk on television. Of course, it's TV, so there are some layers. And it's fun. It's been good. And so far the reviews are good on the show, and the station hasn't really put anything behind it yet. So that's great. It helps when you have teams you're covering that are doing well. People are more excited. But I love to be able to combine TV and radio and even print to do the things I like. So I'm good with it. It's going well. Thank you for asking about that.
Well, the cool thing about it for me is that at a time where it feels like we're getting less of the, sort of traditional and big box media where everybody's kind of doing stuff like this, the B Block podcast and Chalk Talk, and you're seeing almost a de-investment, a less of an investment in sports television, or the I talk about the death of the sports anchor. We still got a couple,
right?
It just doesn't feel the same. And then I look up and y'all got a sports show going.
What? I think you're right, Brandon. And so if I put on my consulting hat on the other side of my business, I would say that sports is one of those things that is still making money for media platforms. The challenge is that people aren't necessarily doing it the right way, because research shows you that people don't want to, the numbers are not great on local TV and sports. And then that same research, if you keep reading, says, oh, this is an opportunity to make revenue because people really want local sports. So what that says to me is how you're delivering it. And what we see in traditional newscasts, which is why people go, opening will come up like, do you want to go get this station? So I've anchored sports on network stations around the country. No, I don't want to do that, because there's just not the landscape is different. But to be able to have conversations about sports and chop things up, people do like that. So it's what you're giving them and how you're delivering it. And I think that's what people have to figure out. So
what did your seasoned sports brain think about the Texans ending the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football? Like, what was your immediate reaction to that?
My immediate reaction was that was supposed to happen. There was no reason for the Texans to go into Kansas City and not win that game with the way the Texans defense has been playing, the way the offense has been starting to trend up. I think that those of us who cover this team know that this is not going to be a great offense in 2025. Okay, we're not going to see great, and we're not going to see probably consistently super explosive. It's just not who that offense is. But we're seeing better. We're seeing good enough, and we're seeing better. And I thought if they continue to be better, which will make them good enough, that this defense could get it done. So I thought it was good to see. I thought it was fitting that it was Kansas City because of the PTSD that the Chiefs have caused this Houston franchise for years. I remember them being up 24-0 under another set coach, and just the trauma that they've caused Texans in recent years, including when Tank Dell went out last year. Well, we can't blame the Chiefs for that, but I'm just saying.
But it did happen there.
That field.
It did happen there. That
It
happened.
happened there. And so for them to be able to come out, and yes, we can talk about how the Chiefs have been trending down this year, but they're still the Chiefs. And you still always know when you have Patrick Mahomes, there's a possibility. You got a Chris Jones, who we saw was super disruptive in the third quarter. There's a possibility something could happen differently. But I'll say this, Brandon. Yeah, the Chiefs are trending down and they probably won't make the playoffs, or they definitely won't win the AFC West for the first time in 9 years. And you did have players that they dropped some passes, but I don't think it's enough to just say they dropped some passes, right? When you're going up against this Texans defense with a secondary that is not just great at coverage, they will hit you. Sometimes when you see a good secondary, they either are good in coverage or they tackle well. They don't always do both. And so that's what this Texans defense does. So dropping a pass isn't just like, oh, they dropped a pass. No, they dropped it because you're thinking about this secondary that may not give you the Jalen Petrie hit that we saw on Rice, but you're gonna get hit. And so I think you have to give the Texans credit for some things that just didn't go well with the Chiefs. But it was good to see the Texans take that step from an execution standpoint, right, and finishing, but also from a confidence standpoint.
Yeah, I thought that they were perfectly built to go up there and play in those conditions against that quarterback, that kind of weather, but with that defense specifically, that it was just tailor made for them. Now, I did have some doubts about them winning the game because of the Chiefs' level of desperation, and
Yeah.
that they did lose that game, and which they did. That losing that game would all but end their season. And I had a tough time seeing them go out like that. But then once they turned it on, like once the game started, like, man, they are outmatched and outmatched in a way that it doesn't matter that the Texans offense isn't very good or isn't very explosive, at least. And it doesn't matter that the Chiefs defense is also pretty good.
Yeah.
The Texans defense itself is so dominant and so physical and so well rounded from top to bottom that there was just nowhere to really go with the football and wasn't really much to do. And so they scored 10 points. And this has kind of been the MO of the team. Here's what I'm curious of, Kim, when you talked about the offense earlier. I'm wondering when is the Texans viewing population, whether that be media fans or whatever, the folks that consume Texans games, when are we going to get to the point of acceptance of what the formula is for this team? Like not to excuse the offense or say that it's good when it's not or anything like that, not to lie about the offense,
Yeah.
but to accept that this team is built a certain way and they're going to strategize in kind. Like they're not going to be out here trying to be the early 2000s Rams because they ain't. But they will look a little bit more like the 2000s Ravens because their defense is closer to a version of that. I don't know if you're seeing this in the spaces that you traffic, but every time a game ends and they've been winning they've won these last 5 games. And
Right.
then and I hear the praise for the defense, but then I hear, oh, the offense is so bad. The offense doesn't do this and the offense didn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, they're not that good. They can't do a lot of these things. But the reason why it works is because they got a defense that they can rely on to keep them in games. And all the offense has got to do is not lose the game.
I see that stuff too. And I'll take maybe a little step further. I don't think this offense this year, for a number of reasons, and I've said it. And so if anybody who's watching has ever followed my work, I am not a fan of the Patriots hierarchy continuing to be a part of the Texans. I'm just not. It is exhausting talking about the offense under, like, which I still say it's the Patriots offense. I covered Bill O'Brien, and Tim Kelly. I've seen this picture before, but what I will say when I say I take it a step further, I think that CJ Stroud is the guy that you want to invest in for your future. I think you see that as he's coming along, and I've heard people say, well, when Davis Mills was in, he commanded things a little differently. Yeah, but CJ Stroud made plays the other night that very few people in the league could make, right? I think that the plays he needed to make when he really needed to make them, you saw why CJ Stroud is the future of this team. starting quarterbacks are really good. Starting quarterbacks are really good, hard to find in the league. And so the Texans have a franchise quarterback. I just feel the need to say that from time to time. And I think if you look at the third quarter, which was awful, that was the desperation you're talking about. It was Spags, who was a super respected defensive coordinator, dialing up stuff, and they had a player in Chris Jones who was super disruptive. That's who he is. The challenge I have is that the Texans did not seem to have an answer for it for so long, and you had to know it was coming. But not a lot of teams are going to be able to do what Spags drew up with the Chris Jones because now we've seen it happen. I'm not worried about that, right? People see what the Texans defense does every week. Other teams can't duplicate it. It doesn't really work like that. So I think this Texans defense, as you said, it's historically good. It's not just they really good, and I'll watch national stuff, and one week they're saying that Seattle is the best defense, or or maybe it's the the backers. But the Texans defense is really good. And every week when we're in that locker room, Brandon, they talk about we left some stuff on the field. We left some plays on the field. They're continuing to work to get better despite all the injuries. I mean, they've had some injuries. They lost Tim Settles, which is key up front for them. They signed a guy that had been with Seattle, that they signed a defensive tackle just the day before yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
To shore up, that helped them up front. They've been thin at safety, and they've not really missed a beat. And so the defense is historically good. The offense is getting better. I mean, I won't even say anymore. You have one playmaker. We know there's Nico Collins. I got to give some credit to Woody Marks. I had Andre Ware on with me this week, and Andre watched Woody Marks when he was in college. And he said, I remember watching him in a game, Kim, and I picked up the phone. Well, I texted Danny Barrett, they're good friends, the Texans running back coach, and said, you got to watch this kid play. Woody Marks is really good.
Yeah.
And he's really good. He's good at pass protection. He's good at getting those extra yards. And with his size and stuff that he's able to do, Brandon, that was a little surprising to me, how he's able to just get the extra yards and kind of run over people, because he's really not that big.
Yeah. No, he's not that big, but he runs between the tackles. He's got the speed to bounce it outside. He's got the dog and willingness to mix it up in pass pro. Like, well, at first, I think that takes intelligence and understanding your assignment and knowing where to go with your blitz pickup. But also, you got to be willing to get in there and get dirty with somebody that is coming at you full speed. And it oftentimes probably is bigger than Woody Marks, and Woody Marks just kind of sticks in there. It's funny that you were having this conversation with Andre Ware, because I can remember during training camp having a similar conversation. And I say similar, it's before we actually saw Woody have the production. But in terms of what he did in college, I talked to Spencer Tillman during training camp when we were out there, and Spencer was like, man, outside of Ashton Genty, that this was the best running back in all of the country last year. Wow. And that was just his time at USC. That's not to speak of what he did at Mississippi State, where he was also a very accomplished running back. And so I was pretty high on him from the very beginning. And then, over there, I'm over at 6'10", and so we got the Texans radio thing happening. When he gets drafted, John Harris almost lost his mind. He was that excited about the kid. And one thing you got to give Johnny credit for, that man loves him some football and pays attention to college football almost like anybody else, unlike anybody else. And so that kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit and got my attention. I'm like, oh man, John Harris. I don't know if I've seen him act like this about a player before, with especially a mid-round sort of pick. And so I was excited about him from the very beginning. But the thing is about the offense that I've been trying to point out is, like, now that they found two things that they found: Woody Marks as their top back, as their lead back. And look, we'll see what's happening with Nick Chubb and his injury. But Nick, the goal was always for Nick Chubb to be a complimentary back to whoever was going to be the top back. I think at the time they were still hoping it would be Joe Mixon.
Right.
Turns out it's not going to be. But then Woody Marks emerges as somebody that's ready to take that role. So that means Nick Chubb can play the role that I think they were always hoping that he would play. So that works. And then they got the offensive line combination
Yeah.
that still isn't necessarily great, but boy, it's a whole hell of a lot better than it was when we first started this season, right? When this thing
Yeah.
started, from where we started from 0 to now is markedly different. And so those things, to me, it seems like allows the offense, even with limited explosive plays, it allows the offense to do two things that it's done very well over this stretch. And that is possess the ball and
Yep.
control the ball,
Control the clock.
and control the clock and not turn the ball over, which is a credit, I think, to the entire offense, mostly probably the quarterback, but the quarterbacks, Davis and CJ Stroud. But they haven't been turning it over, and they've been possessing the ball, which I think the other side of that is that it allows your defense to rest up a little bit, to play fresh, and to go out
They
there
go hard.
and I mean, and this is a defense that could use all the rest that it can get,
Yeah.
because they don't take any plays off. They
Yeah.
don't loaf. They are relentless. They play with their hair on fire. They're flying toward the ball the way defensive coaches want them to do. And so that, to me, is the thing that's really worked about the Texans offense, is that it has found an identity. And as much as people do not want this or like this or are not entertained by this, the identity, Kim, feels like it's not doing too much. That's
Right.
that's the offense. Not doing too much, but then doing exactly what they need to do in the moments where they present themselves, like some of those plays to Nico Collins that we saw on Sunday night, finding
Right.
Jaden Higgins on the third downs that we saw, some of Dalton Schultz's catches that we've seen throughout the season. Like, they make timely, explosive plays while
Yeah.
not being an explosive offense, if that makes sense.
And so I'm gonna just, and I know we're gonna talk about this later. I'm gonna interject something I think is a great example of what we're talking about. The Philadelphia Eagles, defending Super Bowl champions, started off, really well this season. They've hit a bit of a slump. I think they'll be okay, but there was complaints and noise about the way they were winning, and it's not exciting, and it's kind of plain, but it was winning, right? And then there was the noise with AJ Brown, and then in the last 4 weeks, he's been a super big part of the offense, but they've lost 3 in a row. They lost 3 of those games. I'm not saying it's his fault, but you can't worry about the outside noise if what you do is working to win. But it goes to show you sometimes people do tune into that outside noise. And I think that's one of the things that's happened in Philadelphia. Now, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts has played great the past few weeks, but they changed what they were doing that was winning, and now they're not winning. So that I won't get into that. We're going to talk about that later. So what I'm saying is the Texans have to know who they are. And so people get annoyed when DeMeco comes to the podium and they feel like he says the same thing. It's because he believes it. He believes in, like this week, we just looking at the Cardinals. We can't overlook the Cardinals because you could lose, right? He has had that laser focus, and he's gotten his players to buy into that focus. They've also bought into where you've got a defense that has been carrying this team, this offense, sometimes kicking and screaming across the finish line, but you don't get any animosity in that locker room. You get, no, we got them. We all a team. I mean, you really do get, they really are in this together. So the word that's often, I think, used maybe too much and maybe sometimes the wrong way in terms of culture, the culture that DeMeco has built here is working. Because you think about it, Brandon, we've covered teams a lot. I've covered them longer. I'm just a little bit older. And you've seen teams where like one side of the ball is getting everything done and the other side isn't, and it becomes a problem. That's never been an issue in this locker room. And as long as they can keep that going, the offensive line, you mentioned the offensive line. You had Ed Ingram, who was hurt early. You had Trent Brown, who just got back in, 4 or 5 weeks ago from the practice squad. And so they're a little better, which is why on Sunday night, when Winnie Marks went out for the play and Dare came in and scored on that next play, it's because the offensive line is doing what the offensive line has been doing. It's not, Winnie Marks is special, but the offensive line is doing enough to where somebody else with some skills can also eat. So.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned DeMeco Ryans, and you kind of answered my question a little bit already, but I want to just go ahead and ask it plainly, because for me, it's been interesting to observe excuse me, the change, the shift in conversation in some place. Not everybody. I don't want to
Yeah.
overgeneralize, but I've seen the mood on DeMeco Ryans change. And look, they started the season off poorly. It was looking pretty dire there at one point. 0-3, 2-5. Now they rattled off their last 5 games. But it was odd to me to watch DeMeco Ryans, who was homegrown in a lot of ways because he played here. So and that's the obvious connection to the organization. But was a fan favorite as a player, comes here and has immediate success. Goes to back-to-back playoff appearances, back-to-back AFC South championships, and wins a playoff game in both years. And it gets off to a rocky start this year. Now
Yeah.
they've righted the ship, but it was interesting to me to see how quickly it turned on DeMeco Ryans for some people,
Yeah.
given the amount of success that they already had. I thought that based off the first 2 years, that even if they were struggling, and they clearly were earlier this year, that he as a coach deserves some grace. I think as a staff, they've had some not so glamorous moments in game management here and there, and some decision making here and there that deserves it, at the very least, some questioning, and probably to some degree some criticism.
Yeah.
But that's its own thing. I think there's been an extra step, and maybe even before some of those things came up, like just with the 0-3 start, it's like this guy's just a coordinator, or like some of the things that I've seen that I'll see. This guy's just a coordinator, or he's not a head coach, and that sort of thing. And I'm just like shocked by it because I'm like, do y'all remember what things were like in the years before he
Before he
got
got
here,
here.
and what it's been like in the years since? And this is where we are. Like it, I say all that just to say that it shocked me when it shouldn't have, right? Because I know where a lot of this stuff comes from. But I'm
Yeah.
curious from you what you think of the job that DeMeco Ryans has done. Not just, you mentioned the culture setting that he's done, which is I think a job that he's done since he got here. But what
Yeah.
about just this season and just being ready for the adversity, or at the very least just staying the same? That's the one thing I say about DeMeco, is that he's remarkably consistent of a human being, no matter if things are going great or if they're going terrible. I can't always necessarily tell. I can tell sometimes when he's annoyed with us, but
Yeah.
just in terms of how's it going, I don't know. DeMeco for the most part presents to me strength, leadership, consistency, and I think that that's reflected in the team. I'm curious on what you think about the job he's done this year.
So I agree with all that you said. I've known DeMeco since he played, and one of the things I think about him is that he is incredibly consistent. And I asked him a couple weeks ago about, like the messaging. He has the consistency. He said the same thing because I believe it's what he believes. He said, Kim, the message is a message. Like it doesn't change. When he talks about executing and he talks about finishing, that's always been what we had to do. Now, what I know is that what you're going to get from him at the podium, he ain't going to lie to you, but he doesn't have to peel back and tell you everything that he's saying to his players. He gets in their tail. If you're in the locker room enough, they talk to you, but they respect him because they know where it's coming from. So I do think he's done a good job. I do think there's ways of places where you could say, yeah, I don't know. This before the half thing, it's frustrating and we're trying to understand it. And so maybe that's, you could look at that and say that there's an area, there's a place there could be some improvement. But I think that so when you start 0-3, all 3 games you could have won. Because remember, this team has still just lost by 1 score. And even though that Seattle game looked like it was a whole lot worse, they lost by 8 points. Right? They've lost to teams that are all leading their division. So it's not like they've been out here losing to the Cardinals and the Raiders. But to be able to still keep it together, because when you're 0-3, you got to do a lot of work to keep this thing on track and then to turn it around. So I think he's done a really good job with that. And the things that he needs to do a better job at, I'm sure he's working on it. Right. And I was a wee bit surprised at how people jumped off the bandwagon. They're like, yeah, even, a lot of media folk, not a lot, some media folk. Well, that's why you shouldn't hire a defensive coach. I mean, listen, none of them are perfect. I think people would question some calls that Andy Reid made on Sunday night. He's clearly going to be a Hall of Famer, right?
Yep.
I just think sometimes we expect perfection from everyone at every level, and that's just not life. Now, the fact that there's a couple things that continue to happen with this team. We talk about the clock management. You talk about that end of the half. What happens in those instances?
They're bad at the end of halves, Kim. They're
Yeah, I
bad.
mean that
Bad, like
shows up.
it's
That's fair.
crazy because think about it. The Bills game was perfect. The end of half, that touchdown to end the first half in the Bills game, Davis Mills, shout out to him.
Yeah,
They executed that perfectly, and it was like the perfect example. Okay, this is from now on, this is how you end a half. That's how you end a half. And it's like ever since then, and outside of that, they just cannot seem to figure it out or get it right. But it's a very, I think, specific thing that they could work on, and it seems fixable and correctable, as opposed to, let's say, you're a defensive coach and your defense isn't any good,
right.
or I think a valid criticism, which is not a criticism, right? Because the defense is. First of all, how about those people that say don't hire a defensive coach? Are they saying that now when they watch this Texas defense out there play? I wonder where those people are really when Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are getting put on their backside, when Rashee Rice is being and God bless him. I'm glad he's okay, but
Had his soul snatched out on TV.
my goodness, I would not want to be hit like that ever in life. And so, like, to me, it's just the things are correctable
Right.
by and large. And I would say the thing that would be more so to criticize for is like, hey, if you get a defensive coach, then it does come with the caveat of he's got to hire the right offensive coach. And if there
Absolutely.
and if there's anything that I feel like is a valid criticism of not just DeMeco Ryans, but this entire regime so far, is that you're 3 years in, you're 2 offensive coordinators in, and you're not really sure if you're there yet. And I think that's maybe a conversation for obviously for them to have after the season, and maybe a bigger picture conversation. But I think that part is more valid than anything. Like, you can live in the moment and then also
Yeah.
have these worries about, okay, but does the combination of this defensive coach and this regime that we're not sure that we really trust,
So
like,
this is
does
what
that
I
combination work for
no, it
offense?
doesn't. I think it is. They're finding a way to make it work. And so I'm gonna go back to something that, if you follow me, I feel strongly about it. It's Nick Casario. I'm out on him. I thought that when they started over with DeMeco, they should have started over and moved on from Nick Casario. I'm sure he's a lovely family man, so this is not a personal thing. I don't think he's great at his job. So yeah, he's got some players. He's done some things that you can say. I mean, everybody does. He's just not a horrible person. I mean, horrible at his job. But I just don't think. Let's just be clear. Anybody who thinks that Nick Caley wasn't a Nick Casario hire, that's in the industry that does what we do, just stop it. That's a Nick Casario hire. There's no and DeMeco said he hired him. What's he supposed to say? There's no reason for DeMeco to go hire Nick Haley. And Nick Haley's done some good things along the way. So this is not oh my gosh, man should never have a job. But you get rid of Bobby Slowick, which I'd have given him another year. That's just me, right? Unless there was just some personality things that were, irreparable. Because Bobby Slowick was all world in year 1. Things weren't great in year 2, but they didn't start as bad as they did this year in year 3, right? So I think it's unfair to give CJ yet another offensive coordinator his second in 3 years, coming in not just the second in 3 years, but he's still a young player. So I think all of those things are not great. But when you go out and get somebody different, I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to get rid of Bobby Slowick, certainly they're going to hire a guy with experience. And they didn't do that. And so I think that is a problem. You don't have enough to draw on. So that's a problem. I don't know how it gets fixed, but we can't really worry about it because this team is doing some things despite all of that. And so I just think you got to roll with it and hope that they continue to take a few other steps forward. That this line, which is now going to be playing what is third or fourth game together for the same line?
I think fourth.
I think fourth.
I think this
That's
will be
the first time all season, like you finally found like this kind of works. And so as we talk about the line, I want to talk about the left tackle in Ariante Ursery. I think he's their left tackle of the future. Yeah, he's not perfect. He's learning, but I think he has been good for I think they got lucky where they drafted him. I think he's performing better than where they drafted him. Although he's got a lot to learn because that's the toughest spot on the line. But how about Titus Howard?
Man,
Who has just CJ keeps saying he's having an all-pro year. I mean, Titus Howard has kind of stepped into a place where it's his O-line room. And whatever they need him to play, he can. He hasn't played center, but he probably thinks he can play that too. He has been very productive for them.
he's the key.
He's the key.
He is the reason why the offensive line has been able to figure it out, because you were able to here's the thing. The Texans were able to solve their left guard problem with their best right tackle.
Right.
Which is kind of, it is both a shame and a good thing at the same time, because it is a solution at the very least. So you could just maybe stop there.
It was the interior where they really, really struggled.
But Kim, they have been trying to fill that position. Titus been here since 2019, you know, and they've been trying to fill that position basically the whole time.
Yes.
Basically his whole career here, they've been trying to figure something out at left guard. Obviously, we know they drafted the hometown kid, Kenyon Green. That did not work out. They tried to go the Lake and Tomlinson route to start this season. That didn't work out, even to the tune of having a rotation or doing a platoon system of him and Juice Scruggs for a little while.
Yeah.
Then they threw out somebody that we had never seen before. They had played a position for a little bit. They pulled him very quickly. Then we were reminded that Jared Patterson was on the team. I had forgotten all about that. So like all of these swings at it, they have tried literally everything, and it doesn't work. And it just so happened that they drafted a previous regime, by the way. Just we'll point out, somebody else drafted a tackle who turns out can play all the positions on the offensive line. And so
shout out to Rick Smith.
Shout out to him. So when all else fails, and none of the swings that you take at left guard work, you can just put your tackle over there and he'll be your guard and be good at it. And then fortunately they got an experienced right tackle in Trent Brown, who's able to kind of hold, and then he's just a mammoth of a man. Yeah, he's able to kind of hold that down. So
he's a wall.
Yeah. But I think Titus Howard has been key. I also think that Ed Ingram, like I saw that, and I hope I didn't lose Kim here. Kim, you still got me? Looks like I did lose her. But I will make the point though. Ed Ingram, we saw him get worked a little bit by Chris Jones, but Chris Jones whooped everybody. I think whooped everybody at some point in that game, and he's Chris Jones. He's a future Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any shame in getting whooped by Chris Jones, but Ed Ingram is somebody who like is kind of showing himself to be like a diamond in the rough, perhaps their best offensive lineman, which is saying a lot because Titus Howard is probably actually their best offensive lineman, but they've been able to rely on Ed Ingram to play that role and play that position consistently, and he's been their most consistent offensive lineman from that standpoint, just for the simple fact that he hasn't had to move around or anything like that. So it looks like we had a connection issue with Kim. We'll try to get her back, but look, I just wanted to get her because she is somebody, I think this is worth pointing out. She is somebody that is at all of the games, at all of the practices, at all of the media availabilities. So she actually has a great sense for the people that we're talking about as we welcome Kim back.
We had a power surge. I'm like, whoa, what is that? So, okay.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I was just, as we got disconnected, I was mentioning Ed Ingram as like Titus Howard is probably their best overall offensive lineman. But I think Ed Ingram makes a case as being their best offensive lineman as well, just in terms of the consistency, having been at that position and the experience. And honestly, man, like he's just played much better than I was expecting, considering that he was but like Titus is somebody that they drafted high, right? Drafted as a first rounder, and then they paid him. And so he's a like a legitimate objective success story. Whereas Ed Ingram is kind of a castaway from the Vikings. and they were able to make something out of that. I do have to give whoever it is that deserves the credit, whether it's Nick Caserio, whether it's DeMeco Ryans and maybe some of the offensive staff having some input, whether it's Cole Pop, whoever it is that decided Ed Ingram was a project worth trying to figure out, or someone worth
Right.
saving. I think that at least that was a good enough job. And look, they've pieced together an offensive line, to my surprise. They've pieced one
Listen,
together.
Titus Howard talks about how valuable Ed Ingram is. He's talked about it all season, just in the locker room, about his knowledge of the game and what he knows and how what he's learned from Ed Ingram. Just like Ariante Ursary talks about Trent Brown and having a guy like Trent Brown and being able to glean and learn from him. So besides the fact that those guys are on the field being productive, it's not like just a Jeff Green with the Rockets who he's a good bench locker room guy. These are guys that, okay, they're performing, but they're also really pouring into the rest of the guys on the line. And so that has been interesting to see and to hear a Titus talk about, or hear Tay talk about how much he can just lean into Trent Brown. And I did a story with Trent a few weeks back, and he talked about how he wishes he had that kind of player to help and kind of school him when he was new in the league, because there's some things that coaches just can't tell you. You need to get it from a player. And it was interesting the conversation we had, and so he's been helpful in that regard. So yeah, they pieced together a line, and they heads down trying to keep getting a little better, right?
So before we move over to the D, because I do want to ask you about a couple of the defensive players. They're too good not to talk about.
Okay.
But CJ Stroud just, had, I think when you beat the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football, that's a big moment. I don't
In
care that
Kansas City.
in Kansas City. I don't care that he didn't have the greatest stat line. He missed a few throws. It was cold as you know what out there. It was a rough environment, but he's returned. Now he's got a couple of games under his belt since his return. Kind of keeps the winning streak alive. Like I know that was a little uneasy for people when it's like, okay, Davis Mills won 3 straight games. What if CJ lose? Well, guess what? I guess we'll never know, because
Right.
CJ coming there and picked up right where Davis left off, and then some. I would say. I'm curious on what you have thought of CJ in these couple of games back from the concussion, how he's performed, how he's looked, and what it all means to you from where you sit.
So I think when they went up and played the Colts, he admittedly had a little rust. Not even as much as I thought he would have. He started off a little rusty. He had that one pass he'd like to get back, I'm sure. And so I think the thing about CJ that's good, and this is, I guess, growth, and also as he continues to mature, because we have to remember this is his third season. He's still very young into this thing, and but to not try to do too much, right? People want to see the CJ that you saw as a rookie. I think we've seen flashes of that. Yeah, that was a real deal, And people, I've had people say to me, people that I talk to and respect, a couple of guys, they would say, "Oh, I think it was a fluke." Well, it's not like he's a running quarterback, so I don't know how you could call it a fluke. Like, those are some cases where you can go, well, I think CJ is a real deal. I think he's played better. I think he's getting better, getting more comfortable. And I think, Brandon, having an offensive line that's getting better provides him with a little more confidence. And so one of the things that Andre Ware and I talked about was the benefit that Davis Mills had being on the bench all season and seeing the things that didn't work and being able to say, okay, in this new offense. And then when he got his opportunity, he was able to navigate some of those because he sat and watched it, how things unfolded that maybe weren't favorable or things that didn't work out well. But to answer your question, I think that CJ is, I think he's having good enough games to win. And he's having moments that remind you of how spectacular he is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. I think if you take it all in its totality, you could maybe nitpick some things, but you could also, it'd be hard to ignore some of the third and longs to Jaden Higgins as of late.
Yeah.
Him and Nico Collins still seeming to have whatever chemistry it is. And then there was some question about that of like, I saw some people saying like, does Davis Mills have more chemistry with Nico
Oh,
Collins?
please,
And
people, stop it.
I'm like, no. Well, and let's just be fair to both the quarterbacks,
Right.
and more so, really, to Nico. He's Nico Collins,
He's Nico
and
Collins.
so if you
I
can't get the
might be
ball,
able to get a ball to him. I don't know. I'm just
I'm
saying.
just saying, if you can't get the ball to Nico Collins, that's a you problem, right? And it's not some special thing that you can get it to him. And I'm not trying to take away from the quarterbacks, but like he's Nico Collins. That should be like a not a cheat code, but like a handicap, something that helps that helps a quarterback having Nico Collins. No matter if you're a good quarterback, bad quarterback, or somewhere in between, you got Nico Collins. That's a good thing.
Get the ball to him. And that's one of the things that I think that, and I didn't really cut you off, that the criticism of Nick Caley is you got to draw up more stuff.
Yeah.
For Nico Collins.
Yeah.
Because you one-on-one, he wins it.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to hold him? And even the other places, he knows how he's going to come back to the ball. He's going to make a play. I mean, he is a playmaker. He's really good. Yes. And so find a way to get in the ball. That's your job.
All right. So on the defensive side here, let's start it off with this and by asking you this. Okay. Who is the MVP of this incredible defense? And wow. I only ask you this because it's an impossible question to answer, and it's a fun thing to think about. Who's the MVP? Fun to think about. While you think about it, let me kind of lay it out for the audience a little bit. Okay. Could it be the phenom pass rushing Will Anderson, the pass rushing protege Will Anderson Jr.? Could it be the very unique but oddly strange combination of power and speed of Danielle Hunter? Could it be all-pro Derek Stingley? Should be all-pro Kamari Lassiter on the other side? Could it be Jalen Petrie? Could it be Kalen Bullock? You see where I'm going here?
Yeah.
Where I've rattled off no less than 4 or 5 different names of guys, 5 or 6 different guys, and I didn't even get to
a guy like Aziz who wears a green dot a lot, which things you don't see, but he's the quarterback of that defense.
But has had an amazing season. I thought, I think, I named all those guys before I even got to any of the linebackers, and I think the linebackers this year have been so dialed in. It's starting with Aziz, but really all of them that have played. Aziz, I know Henry has had some missed tackles here and there. But if you look at his entire season, he's played with his hair on fire too. EJ Speed has been a tremendous addition to that group. Like it just is from top to bottom such a good defense overall as a unit, but then also individually. Yeah. If you just isolate them from guy to guy, name to name. And so I asked that question, acknowledging that I don't think that there are any bad answers, but there's not a clear one as well.
There's also not a clear one because they all do something maybe a little different, but that work together, and then when you look at it, and maybe it wouldn't be the MVP of the defense, but a guy like bringing a Sheldon Rankins back and what he's meant to the interior of that line, has been tremendous. Yes. I just think they are, it's tough to pick. I mean, I think people will go, oh, it's Will Anderson, but what Danielle Hunter brings to that line and to that defense, Will Anderson doesn't miss a week where he says, I'm able to do a lot of what I do because of that guy over there, right? What I'm learning from him, but also because I'm playing across on the other side from him. I mean, so he is kind of a quiet, unique, understated in terms of his approach. But I mean, Jalen Petrie, oh my gosh, where you're able to put him wherever you need him. And I think people forget this year about Stingley because you don't hear his name a lot because they won't even go near him.
Yeah.
But then you don't go near him. Now you got to deal with Kamari Lassiter, the lockdown guy. And then Bullock on the back end who, he was also a baseball player, center fielder. So the fact that he's able to track the ball, that tracks, right? It's why it's so easy, natural for him. And then the other safety spot has been a rotation. That's how good they are, right? We started with C.J. Gardner-Johnson because Jimmy Ward has been out hurt. He's out, obviously, all year, right? You don't bring him back at this point because how do you get up to speed? Then he goes out, and then
MJ Stewart for a while.
MJ Stewart comes in. He gets hurt. I mean, everybody that got another guy come in, get injured, and they've still been able to.
Yeah, the rookie Jalen. They got
Jalen,
Jalen's
is
now.
it
I forgot.
Reed Smith,
That was Reed.
Johnson John? I don't know. Whatever.
That one's Reed. That
It's
one's
Reed.
Reed. But then they got another Jalen from the Jets named Mills that
Mill.
bringing up
Right.
off the practice squad. So they've played no less than 4
Jalen's.
games just in the secondary. Now, and that's not even counting Jalen Noel. But
Right.
go ahead, continue.
So yeah, I think you're right. It's an unfair question. I think for some people, the obvious answer would be a Will Anderson Jr. because he gets a lot of the publicity, and not that I mean, look, well deserved, but it's all those pieces, man. I just would be like, I'm gonna say the defense.
Yeah.
I can't pick.
I think that I would also probably still go with Will Anderson Jr. because I mean he's just so relentless, man. And all of them are.
So,
but man, he's had a couple of plays where it looked like the play was over, or at the very least he was out of the play. Like maybe the play was over. Maybe the play was supposed to be over for him, and it just wasn't. Like you said, there he was. And it's just incredible to watch. I think he's got a case that I think both of the edge rushers have solid cases.
Yeah.
But the fact that they play so well off of each other, you could also make the case that they might even cancel each other out. I think you just mentioned him. I think the most solid and underrated case is probably Derek Stingley Jr. because his value is in the space where he's not even making the plays because they just won't even consider it.
They won't consider it. And when they do, he shows up, right?
Yes.
He's not asleep. He's just really, really good.
He's so good.
And his personality is that. I think Quisenberry tweeted something. Maybe he was in the Colts game afterwards. He said, I played with this guy for however long he played with Stingley. He said he's just, he's gonna get on the bus because either it's Popeyes or Chick-fil-A. He's gonna say 7 words. He's gonna get out there, make these tremendous plays. Go hard the whole time, do what he does, and then get back and do it all over again. I mean, that's who he is. Like, he ain't gonna say a lot, but what he does is so significant. And Kamari Lassiter has really developed. I mean, last week we just wondered if he would even play.
Right? And play he did.
Play he did.
Kim, I thought he had to play it again, at least one. There were a few of them.
Yeah.
You go Petrie, but that pass breakup on Thornton. It was a first down play where Patrick Mahomes just launches it into the end zone for almost 40 yards.
Yeah.
And it's a slight underthrow that I think helps Kamari get there, but Kamari got there last second. I think he was beat on the play. Everybody was beat on the play. Thornton is behind both Lassiter and I think Bullock is back there. He's behind like at least 2 or 3 Texans defensive backs, and then their Kamari is getting there right at the last second, late hands to knock the ball away on what would have been one of the Chiefs' few explosive plays. Like that was set up to be a 40-yard touchdown bomb, and probably would have been against almost any other defensive back, maybe on almost any other day, except when Kamari said, "Not today,
not today."
But so
not
I
today.
I think Kamari should be. Kamari at the very least is a Pro Bowler this year and should be making a case for all pros. Is going to be difficult because there's so many good corners, starting with one of his teammates with Derek Stingley, and then there are others throughout the league. But he's making a bid, I think.
Oh, he absolutely is. And you make a great point. The chances of them putting 2 guys from the same team as all pro, slim. Derek definitely has to be all pro, but Kamari's he's having a Pro Bowl season at the least. At the least he's having a Pro Bowl season, and man, and this is year 2 for him.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. I don't think we can say enough about the defense. Look, before we get out of here, I was going to ask you a little bit about the Rockets too, but they got such a long season. I think we can come back. I'll have you back on to talk more Rockets at a later date because. Look, they're going to have an opportunity to be one of the top teams. They are, to be clear, one of the top teams in the Western Conference already. But I think they'll have a chance to go to the conference finals and maybe even make it to the finals, depending on what they can do against either I think the other
OKC.
teams are OKC and Denver are going to be right there with them. But
And the
we'll have
Lakers
time.
have been surprisingly good.
And the Lakers have shocked me because I thought they were going to be a lower seed, borderline play-in type of team. And no, that's not it. That's not it at all. They're great. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But before we go, I want to talk about a couple of quarterbacks that got Texas roots. One of them even has Houston area roots, and he also played in the Super Bowl like Patrick Mahomes did, except he won it this last one. And that's the Super Bowl MVP, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I was saying this when I was watching them the other night against the Chargers. I was telling my girlfriend this, that there is something about with Jalen Hurts, the more uncomfortable the moment gets, or the more the harder it is to do, that's when he seems like he raises up.
Shines,
But
man.
he shines. But it's almost like, and I'm not actually saying this, but it just how it looks. He almost looks bored with normalcy, with just the mundane, the regular, week whatever of the regular season. It's like we got to get closer to the Super Bowl to really bring the greatness out of this guy. But otherwise, it's so odd how different he looks. I'm curious what you've thought about his season and about the Eagles, because we talked about what the Texans just did to the Chiefs, but both the teams that participated in the Super Bowl, including the one that won it, like I mentioned, are reeling right now.
Yeah.
And with the Eagles specifically, as uncomfortable as it is to point out, and as much as I like this guy as an individual, Jalen Hurts seems to be holding them back right now. I mean, 4 turnovers,
Right.
or was it? It was at least 4 picks, maybe 5 turnovers, because he had the one play where he throws the pick and fumbles. Like we've never seen that before.
Never seen that. Two turnovers in one play.
Never seen it.
I think he has not been great lately. I think that's fair to say. But if you go back to that Chargers game, if AJ Brown catches either of those balls, we're not talking about it like this, right? And I mentioned AJ Brown because early in the season, he was unhappy and they were winning, and I kept thinking, like, what is this about? Well, he has been a focus of the offense the past 4 weeks. They've lost 3 of those games. That's not to say it's his fault, but the Eagles have gotten away from what they were doing to be successful, right? It was boring what they were doing. People wanted to see more. The radio, I'm watching like the host in the market are talking about, the scheme's not exciting. Anyway, you can't get away from what you do to win. Now, Jalen wasn't great on Monday night. There's no other way around it. He wasn't great. But man, a couple of those plays, it's all the difference in the world if your guy doesn't drop the ball but hits him right here in the hands. Like, best ball game. And so for me, it's hard to not include that in my analysis of what I see of him. That he wasn't great on Sunday. I mean, he had all those turnovers, but 2 of them on his,
Yeah.
I just think that's all of it is a part of the equation. And I think we have to, you're doing a disservice to how you look at the game if you don't include that. Jalen is their best guy. I mean, they've been to the Super Bowl 2 of the last 4 years, partly because of him. But think about how much is different. You had this run game in the past that you leaned on, and you haven't had that kind of success with the run. I mean, there's just a lot of things that go into it. Yeah, I heard somebody a reporter ask head coach Sirianni, has he thought about benching Jalen? I mean, what are we talking about? No, he ain't been great. But no, we're not thinking about benching Jalen Hurts, right? That's just, we've got to fix it, and he's got to get it together. But this whole thing about you should bench him and then do what? Yeah, stop it. But I think that's just this microwave society that we're in, Brandon, where people need it quickly. And this isn't working, so let's do that. The same people who said, well, just let Mills keep playing. No. There's a reason that you went out and got a quarterback. We've been here for the Mills experience. I thought Davis Mills did a really good job of coming in. He didn't play great, but he did what he needed to do to help the team win those games. But I was here when they drafted Mills. I've seen him these past few years. And no, there's no quarterback controversy. Even he knows it. But I'm glad the team has gotten to a point that if for some reason CJ gets injured like he did, they don't have to try to go and find Case Keenum. You can play your backup.
Yeah.
And still have a chance to win. So I say all that to say that quarterback spot, man, a lot comes with it. Fall off one game and people want to run you out of town. So yeah, Jalen hadn't been the greatest, but that whole offense has struggled.
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't see how you can like he's been bad at times even, and I think it was bad on the other night on but I also think that you got to acknowledge the fact that they've changed play callers 1,000 times, and in Jalen Hurts' specific case, like aside from the Eagles who have to change the play caller every year, his situation specifically, he has a different play caller basically every year of his career since the beginning of time. It feels like like he's able to adjust to that.
Right? You can't really undersell that. It takes a minute, and this is a guy that's got some experience now. He's been to this. He's been in 2 Super Bowls the past 4 years. He was the best player on the field in both of them. One he won, one he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at the one he lost in Phoenix. He was the best player that night on the field. His team didn't win. So I think it's fair to be able to say, well, man, he was bad on this game. These things he made were bad. But then I also can say, man, if AJ Brown makes one of those plays, they win. So he's bad and they win. You know what I mean? So I think if you look at, and this is one of the things that DeMeco talks about a lot, we sometimes have our roundtable conversations that are off the record, but some of the things along the way throughout the season, DeMeco tries to remind us of is that the goal is to win, right? At the end of the day, if the Texans had been super explosive and CJ has, 4 passes of 40 yards or more and they lose, no one's going, man, but the style points are super cool. The goal is to win.
Did you see that offense? Did you see that play calling? Did you see that game management? No one cares if you lose.
If you lose, it doesn't matter. And so it doesn't mean that those things can't be pointed out and they shouldn't be trying to work on them. I imagine they are, because they watch so much tape and they break down so many things. I just can't imagine that they're not saying, we want to be better in this situation. They just haven't gotten there yet when it comes to the end of the half clock management.
Yeah. Stay tuned, by the way. Stay tuned on that, because it was not good in their most recent game, and it definitely is going to have to be better if they're going to make this playoff run that everybody's anticipating that they're going to make. Let me ask you this. Why did it take so long for the Cleveland Browns to realize that Shedeur Sanders was a better quarterback than Dylan Gabriel?
What a bad organization that is. Let me just start there, okay? And let me just also make this plug. This is why DeMeco should have been Coach of the Year his first season and not Stefanski.
Yes.
Okay, I've gotten that off my chest.
And I would have put I was there for that one. Like I was in Vegas.
Oh yeah.
I snuck my way into their little venue where they were holding that, and I was. And reason why I say I snuck my way, because I didn't have a seat. I had to watch from the lobby, and
You're in there.
But the whole time I'm like, Kevin Stefanski, the dude that just lost to DeMeco, and I know they vote before that and everything, but it looked bad at the time, and now it looks awful.
It looks awful. It's like this dude, because you hate to buy into the chatter and the Twitter, and that's not really the real world, and all the talk, and he just doesn't like Shedeur. It feels kind of personal. Like, what are we doing? And I mean, it was like he had to go kicking and screaming into playing Shedeur to where the locker room probably would have just revolted, if he had tried to go back to Dylan Gabriel. This team is not very good. Not going anywhere this season. Why wouldn't you try to see what there is from Shedeur? And so when people will say, well, Kim, but he was a 5th round pick. When was Tom Brady drafted? Not comparing him to Tom Brady. So miss me on the when he's drafted. What are you seeing? right? What is he showing you?
Well, I would even go further, Kim, and say that the fifth round pick part is where, I mean, that was where I was first, kind of tipped off to this being a little bit
Like
shady.
what's going
Like,
on here?
it was, it struck me when the Saints took Tyler Shuck instead
Right.
of instead of Shedeur
Shedeur
Sanders. That was my first red flag. I was like, okay, look,
sums up.
I think that some people have maybe overhyped Shedeur a little bit because of the fame, because of the background, because of a lot of the attention that's around Dion and that program and everybody. So many people rooting either for it and against it. And so maybe he is a little bit overhyped. But then I thought there was an overcorrection of him being now underrated in a
Right.
way to when we're going to say, because I didn't think he was necessarily top 3, top 5 pick worthy per se, but I thought he was better than Tyler Shuck. I
I
thought
thought
he was I thought he was better than doggone Dylan Gabriel. And so the
yes.
further along that we got into the draft and the further along Shedeur dropped, I thought, okay, either
Yeah.
he did something really, really terrible behind the scenes, like not like illegal, but like offensive to somebody that we
Yeah.
don't know about, or there are some other factors at play here. It could be a number of things that you could point out. Racism. It could be, hey, we don't like a certain boisterous type, a certain
Right.
loud type. It could be
He's got his
the
own brand. We won't have to
He's
deal
got
with
his
that.
own brand. I don't like famous guys who haven't done anything yet. It could be a number of different. It could be a combination of all of those things. But
Yeah.
something was up once he dropped that far to begin with. And to me now, it's like, oh, yeah, it's no surprise that this guy that should never have been drafted behind Dylan Gabriel to begin with turns out to be better than Dylan Gabriel.
Um, I had a guy that covers the league say this to me. He said, "Well, I think the owners, no, let me get this right. The league didn't want it to seem like collusion because everybody was kind of like in on um, not drafting Shador high. And so I think the league kind of leaned on Cleveland to make him draft him. And I'm sitting here going, this is a guy that covers the league, not like just a fan or a YouTube aggregator. This guy covers the league." And I was like, "Are you?" He goes, I think that's could be, of course he wouldn't just say it because whoever his sources are, he talked about it, and he didn't want to go into that. He said, but I think that's what it was. And so the league will sometimes ask a team, kind of to do them a solid, like, do this because we don't want it to look like that. And I said, well, Cleveland, and so Stefanski didn't want to do it. It was an owner's move. I mean, it's just Cleveland's a bad organization, you know. But Shedeur Sanders, I mean, there were points in the season, Brandon, where people on some of the national shows were talking about Shadeur's response when they'd ask him stuff. So he was the third string quarterback, and I would ask people, "Do you know who the third string quarterback is for the Texans?" Unless you cover a team, you don't know it's Graham Mertz. You don't know that. Why would you? Nobody talks to the third string quarterback. So you're going to tell me it should be a better interviewer? Are you kidding me? We don't even talk to the second string quarterback until he becomes the first string because the other guy's hurt.
And,
I
and
mean,
not to mention, that they don't even bother to just be honest with themselves and ask themselves, why are you talking to the third string quarterback? Why are you talking to him or about him? There's a reason.
there's
There's a
a reason.
reason. Got to
Yeah. So
think about it.
I thought that was yeah, I think that's unfortunate. I think he's handled it well. Has done everything perfectly? Probably not. He's a young man and he's human. But I think he shows up, he plays hard, and he's like, listen, I got more to do, more to learn. He doesn't want to lose. I think that he's got the respect of the guys in the locker room, which is really key, right?
Yeah.
You gotta have that. And that's probably why Stefanski kicking and screaming went to, nah, he's gonna be our guy the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna start Kim anymore. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, how obvious is it?
Yeah. Look, I don't have any passionate feelings about Shedeur one way or I don't have a reason to root against him, certainly. And I'm not a Browns fan, obviously, but I will say this much, and I believe this wholeheartedly. If he is the real deal, if Shedeur Sanders is good, That organization don't deserve them.
Oh my goodness, they
They don't
don't.
deserve them.
They
They
don't
don't deserve
deserve
them.
it.
Like I don't. Again, I don't have a reason to root against somebody's success. So I am going to root for Shedeur's success, Shedeur
Right.
Sanders' success. But I somehow want it to happen somewhere else.
Somewhere else, because you're
I
right.
don't know how that's
That
going to happen because they have his
organization doesn't
rights.
deserve him, right?
They don't deserve good things to happen to them. They just don't. They don't. And I like some people from Cleveland.
Yeah.
I like some Browns fans, but that
I know, yeah, that's
organization,
Stephanie who works for Space City Houston. I like her. Isn't Biggie from Cleveland?
Biggie from Cleveland and grew up a
I mean, I
Browns
do
fan.
like some of them, but yeah, man. Mm-mm.
They don't deserve them. They don't deserve it. And I think people probably said some similar things about the Texans at one point. And I
Yeah,
think they might have been right at one point about this
they were right at one
organization.
point. They were right about it. But
And so this
you
is
can
kind of
right your
like that.
ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is kind of like that. I'm rooting for Shedeur, but I'm rooting against the Browns, and that feels like it's in conflict. But just all I would say is stay strong out there, brother, because it feels like it is a
It's a shark
it
tank.
feels like he is set up to fail one way or another. One way or another, whether that's on the field or just by nature of the fact that they didn't want him there to begin with. So.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, we've done an hour, Kim. We got stuff to do today too, as well. We got Texans.
I
We got
know
a
we
big
got.
week
Look, I'm gonna
coming
go
up.
commit to Rockets. I'm gonna head out to Rockets practice, and I'll be a Texan. So,
Yeah.
full day of Houston sports. But this is what we do, y'all. I can sit and talk to Brandon all day, all the time, and I love
Yes.
it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, no, absolutely. And we're gonna do it again. That is Kim Davis of Chalk Talk. And look, I appreciate everybody who has joined in, who has tuned in and checked us out. Look, it is an interesting and fun time here in Houston sports, and I could not find a better person to talk to about than Kim Davis. So I want to thank her again for being a part of the podcast. I want to ask y'all to make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, tell a friend, and until next time, y'all be good.